folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content, Lord of the Rings home, back by unpopular demand. We're going to do another tier list. One of the things we're going to do, though, is after you finish watching this video, I'm going to put up a poll in the community section of my channel, and you'll be able to rate how well I did on the tier list, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, and somewhere in between. We'll see how we go there. I'm going to keep messing around with this stuff because I want you all to be involved, so I think later down the line, we might also try and, people can make their own tier lists, and then my tier list, we can compare it to what the community's, rankings of the tier list are, their average rankings. I think that could be a lot of fun as well. Today's tier list, though, we're going to be talking about the best raid teams. This is going to be Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And what I'm including is kind of the best version of that team or the most common variations of that team. For example, Isengard can include Ironhide. What I won't include is uncommon variations. So Isengard with, let's say, Bekaloo, I don't think we're going to count that. We're just going to do common variations and pretty much like, pretty strong versions of the team. So it's going to be based off Chapter 1, how well they do there, Chapter 2, and then, of course, the third and the biggest factor for tier lists is vibes. With that, we're going to get started. Rohan team. Personally, I run the Rohan 3 with Strider and Halberad. I know a lot of people kind of mix and match there, especially, I think this is probably the biggest mix and match team. You can put a lot of people with Rohan 3. They do pretty well in Chapter 1 because Aemir, he's got so many assists. He's got his team up abilities. He can summon. It's very good for Chapter 1 of the raid. I pretty much have no problems maxing out difficulty 2 with both of my Rohan teams and both my accounts. Chapter 2, I also think they're pretty good. Got a lot of debuffs. Eowyn's leadership ability, right? Can do crit at max, which of course nobody has. But you're pretty close to getting plus 50% crit chance. I think without that, it's what, 35% crit chance if you have it at ability level 4? That's pretty good. If you play Strider with this team, which I do, then you're also getting a burn, which is just incredible. So for that, I think they're actually A tier. Dwarves. Currently, I'm running Feely, Keely, Beefer, Legolas, and Gimli on my main account. I'll probably swap to adding Fro in there and taking Legolas and Gimli out and then maybe throwing somebody else in there. But for now, that's what I have. The issue currently with Dwarves is that there are 4 or 5 bugs that basically just affect them. So I'll give you examples. Chapter 2, Beefer's slow doesn't actually apply to the troll because it doesn't have the large tag. Keely's special 1, which is supposed to apply a bunch of bleeds if they have boons, the enemy, it doesn't really recognize momentum as a boon, so you don't end up applying more than 1 bleed. 4 bleeds on the cave troll would be terrific, be great damage, be worth that. Gimli's no longer retaliating. There's a lot of things happening with Dwarves. I think they have potential, but they're just not that good right now. Chapter 1, they also basically just do okay. Obviously, the Keely basic that calls Feely, terrific, but they're kind of slow. Biffer's all right. There's some potential there, but it's not realized yet. So unfortunately, I think I have to put them in the B tier. They go from C to B because of vibes. Mordor. I've heard a lot of good things about Mordor for Chapter 1 specifically. I think they do pretty well in Chapter 1. Chapter 2, it seems like they kind of fall off a bit. You do have a character that applies burn. I forget what their name is. But it's not... I just don't think they have the sustain and the ability to kind of get around cleanses. Plus, they've got, I think, that ability that basically gives everybody speed up, but then gives them speed down. Chapter 1, good. Chapter 2, not as much. I'm going to put them in B tier. We don't even need to talk about it. S tier. Rivendell Elves have been smoking everybody else, especially in terms of like investment to points. I think they do very, very well. They're just a terrific raid team. It's really cool to see actually Lomi and, shine a little bit in Chapter 2. Goblins. Now, I'm gonna move this guy here. We'll do him next. Very few people are playing Goblins right now. There's some dedicated Goblin folks out there, and I actually haven't seen a lot of footage about this, but apparently Goblins are okay. Okay to good. I think people, it's really hard to judge. I haven't seen a lot of footage about this. If somebody knows more about Goblins and can inform me, then I would like to see all that sort of stuff. But for now, I don't think I'm going to rank them very high. I think I'm going to put them in C tier just because I don't know a lot about them. And I still think they're pretty squishy. So they do have the Goblin Chef who works pretty well. I think you just need, I'm not sure. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to do that. That's going to make the Mordor people mad, but that's okay. Road to Rivendell, the Hobbits. They're bad. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, let's move on to Haradrim. Basically, a lot of people are upset about their Chapter 2 performance because they don't land debuffs as much as they think they should. Currently, the only team I know that has maxed out 900k points on Isengard is on Chapter 2 is apparently Isengard and not Haradrim. But I think they do pretty well in Chapter 1, and I think they do work in Chapter 2. It's just a matter of kind of getting everything up there. So I'm actually going to put them in A tier. Legolas lead. So this would just be like a bunch of elves under Legolas, and it works. It doesn't really seem to work that well in Chapter 1. Chapter 2, you could kind of think about using it because you get the haste and you get the advantage, so you can keep getting crits and, you know, kind of maintain momentum that way. And, you know, that's good, but there's just not, doesn't come together as well as you would like. I anticipate that this is going to eventually be a pretty decent lead, but it's also leadership much like Beefer's leadership, where it's kind of like, oh, you have some extra elves left over. Time to just throw them under Legolas, right? If you're not using Legolas in, let's say, a fellowship squad or something like that. So I actually think it's probably D tier here. And then last but not least, we have the Isengard team. So I think the big question here is, do you put them ahead of the Rohan team or do you put them behind the Rohan team? So I think they do very well in Chapter 1 when you have the right, like, you know, if you've got Ironhide up, if you've got Ugluk up, I think they do pretty well. They do suffer from the fact that they don't have any basically cleanses, and the way that they get healing, right, is by applying debuffs. That doesn't happen when you're just throwing attacks into the bomber, but Ugluk has an assist or team up attack, and Mauer has a team up attack. I think they're pretty fun to play, but their Chapter 1 performance is not as strong as I would say for the Rohan team. Chapter 2, on the other hand, like I mentioned before, right, they have a crazy good time in Chapter 2. They're better than Haradrim in the sense that they're the only team we've seen get 900k points, or at least that we know about. And that was with basically a full maxed out Isengard team. They have great control in that Chapter 2. It's, you know, if you can land weak-minded with Morja, and Morja's also got disrupted, it just keeps compounding and compounding and compounding. And you can basically just build up all of these debuffs on the cave troll and do really solid work. You're not limited by the fact that you can't apply debuffs like you can, like on the bomber. Obviously, when you hit enraged, it does become tougher, but the weak-minded from Morja actually helps so much. So you're able to control a lot of those momentum stacks and control him getting enraged stacks as well, which is what gives him that resistance. I think I have to, but they just don't do so well in Chapter 1. This is a tough one. I think by virtue of the fact that they are the only team so far that at least I've heard about from the community that can get 900k points in Chapter 2, I think we got to put them in the top of A tier. So this is kind of my tier list here. I do think it's funny. I think people expected Haradrim to be up here, and that's just not the case. They're probably not the best team. What I do really like is that basically the 2 starter teams are just excellent raid teams. All right, and I will be serious now, and we can rate the Hobbits. So Hobbit people, please don't get mad at me. I think they do really well in Tier 1 or Chapter 1 just because of the team-up attacks. I think they start to struggle more in Chapter 2, just again because of their sort of squishiness. They do go very, very fast. Pippin has a boon removal and a cleanse, kind of. That's fine. Strider's a crit machine. I think it's okay. Sam has a blind. I just don't think they're going to be doing that well. So begrudgingly, look at what I have to do here. I don't want to do this, but I think I have to put them ahead of Dwarves. I definitely don't think they're as good as Haradrim overall, especially with Chapter 2 performance, but you know, I think they're pretty good for raid. The issue is, of course, that they are a level 60 team, but you know, we're kind of comparing at those max stats anyway. Okay, that's it for me. What do you think about the tier list? I'm going to put up a community poll, and you can kind of rank from best to worst. Obviously, if you found this entertaining and engaging, we're going to keep doing these every once in a while. But if you found this entertaining or engaging, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, take it easy.